Amazing true story of my grandma revealed. What my mom did for me changed everything forever. In the cozy little town of Maplewood, every storefront was a piece of history, and every sidewalk held a story. Sarah, a spirited 16-year-old, found her hope and courage in the tales shared by her grandma, a courageous war veteran. She often said, "Life is a battlefield, kiddo. Don't let fears keep you from dreaming." Those words echoed in Sarah's mind as she bravely navigated her world, a world where she juggled school, part-time work at the local diner alongside her hard-working mom, and the heavy legacy of her family's past. But that summer, just before her senior year, everything began to shift. The whispers of discontent slid through the town like dark clouds. Property lines, long-standing grudges between neighbors, and deep-rooted tensions surfaced. Each fragment of gossip stung Sarah as they tied back to her family's history, revealing the bittersweet sacrifices her mom had made to keep them afloat. What was once admiration morphed into a burning question in her chest: is this struggle worth my dreams? One sweltering afternoon, while dust motes danced into the sunlight at Grandma's home, Sarah found herself digging deeper into family history, unraveling stories of struggle that ripped at her heart. Grandma's eyes sparkled with pride, but a shadow whispered under her smile. Sarah's fingers trembled over old photos featuring her grandma in uniform, medals glinting, but behind those glories lay tales of hurt, resilience, and extraordinary sacrifices. Sarah felt her chest tighten, a twist of admiration and sorrow pulled at her heartstrings. Then it hit her: a scholarship essay contest. The theme? The value of community. This was her chance to not only secure her future but to illuminate the hardships that made her family who they were. With every sentence she crafted, memories came alive: the scent of her mom's homemade dinners, the way she hustled at the diner, or those nights she stayed up late cleaning houses. Each detail sharpened, pulling Sarah deeper into a tapestry of sacrifice and identity, love and pain. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue with her essay taking shape. Sarah felt the emotional weight rising. She was confronted by the moral dilemma of her young life when she learned that a powerful local business owner was intricately tied to Maplewood's disputes, the very individual who could perhaps change her fate. An icy shiver ran down her spine. What if advocating for her family's honor could only deepen the community's rifts? As she wrestled with her thoughts, an unexpected event jolted her. A fight broke out at the community meeting about the essay contest. Sarah's heart raced, breaths shallow, her mind racing between the lines of loyalty and truth. With everything at stake, she stood on the precipice of a decision, uncertain of how this chapter of her life would end. Would she shine a light on her family's struggles and, in doing so, risk the very heart of her community? The question hung heavy in the air, leaving her breathless as she prepared to confront the future of her family, and Maplewood itself. The chaos in the community meeting swirled around Sarah like a storm. Voices intertwined, rising and falling, a cacophony of emotions and accusations. She felt adrenaline surge through her veins, her heart thumping like a drum against her ribcage. The sight of Mr. Thompson, the local businessman and one of the key players in the dispute, standing defiantly while the others hurled insults his way, sent a chill down her spine. He was the person she'd need to persuade if she was going to win this contest and change her family's fate. "Sarah, what do you think?" A fierce voice cut through the turmoil. It was Julia, one of her classmates, eyes wide and expectant. All eyes turned to Sarah. The air felt electric. She hesitated, unsure of how to respond, the weight of her grandma's stories flooding back, stories about courage and standing up for what's right. Yet, the more immediate question loomed: were those lessons strong enough to confront someone like Mr. Thompson? Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped forward. Her voice was shaky but determined as she called out, "Everyone! We can't let this divide us further." Some faces turned toward her, surprised at her boldness. "We have history in our community. My grandma fought for our freedom. We shouldn't fight among ourselves over property lines and old grudges. The statement ignited a spark amongst a few, but others simply crossed their arms, unimpressed. Mr. Thompson smirked. And what do you suggest, young lady? That we just forget the past? Forget my investments that built this town? He leaned forward, an imposing figure. That accusation hung in the air like a thick fog. Sarah felt a flash of anger sparkle in her chest. Was this man really equating progress with betrayal? But as she opened her mouth to respond, doubt crept in like an unwelcome guest. What could she say that would not only defend her family but also heal the rifts in the community? Maybe we should listen to each other instead of just shouting. The words poured out, surprising even her. When I interviewed my grandma about her life, she said that unity in hard times means everything. Let us find common ground. Several community members nodded thoughtfully, a few murmuring agreement. A flicker of hope ignited in Sarah's heart. Maybe she could be the bridge this community so desperately needed. But as the meeting continued, she saw Mr. Thompson's smile fade. He was no longer the powerful figure with all the answers, he was just as human as everyone else, vulnerable in the haze of conflict. As the discussions pressed on, Sarah's mind raced, piecing together her thoughts and feelings. Courage surged as she began to extract the threads of her family's story from her essay struggles, resilience, and the simple strength found in community. When the meeting finally adjourned, Sarah felt a new resolve. The storm hadn't fully passed, but the air carried a different charge. There was an opportunity here, not just to tell her family's story, but to weave it into the fabric of Maplewood. In the days that followed, her writing poured out like never before. But at the back of her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that confronting Mr. Thompson was just the beginning. It was a small step in a much larger battle. As Sarah bound together her thoughts in her essay, she stumbled upon a letter tucked inside an old book left by her grandma. Instantly, dread and excitement overwhelmed her. What hidden truths might it reveal? Her heart raced. What if this letter held the key to not only her scholarship but something much larger, a way to heal the town? With trembling hands, she reached for it. As she unfurled the old, yellowed paper, the weight of history pressed against her. What secrets lay within, ready to change everything? The letter crinkled softly in Sarah's hands as she carefully unfolded it. The delicate script of her grandma's handwriting brought a flurry of memories rushing back, the gentle warmth of her embrace, the stories shared over steaming cups of tea. She scanned the first few lines, her pulse quickening. Dear Sarah. It started simply enough, yet the words felt saturated with urgency. Her grandmother had penned this letter for a reason, as if she knew the challenges Sarah would one day face. As Sarah read on, the familiar tone of her grandma enveloped her like a cozy blanket, but soon the contents sparked a storm of confusion. The letter spoke of a long-lost land deed, one tied to a parcel of property that had belonged to their family for generations. It detailed how her grandmother had fought against Mr. Thompson's family when they first arrived in Maplewood, tensions flaring over what she believed was rightfully hers. Wait, what? Sarah gasped, feeling a knot in her stomach. How had she never known about this? What did it mean for her current battle to persuade Mr. Thompson? With each line, the story unraveled a tale of bravery, resilience, but also heartache. Her grandma had feared that if she pushed too hard for what was just, the community would turn against her. As Sarah's heart raced, she realized how connected this history was to her own struggles now. It was not just a family story, it was a community legacy. The last lines of the letter struck her with seismic force. I hope one day you'll find the strength to stand up for what we believe is right. Never let fear silence your voice. Tears pricked at the corners of Sarah's eyes. How could her grandma have had such foresight? Sarah clenched the letter tightly, newfound vigor pulsing through her veins. This was her moment to embody her grandma's courage, to reclaim not just the family history but the dignity of her community. She sprang into action, gathering her materials to track down the land deed. There had to be something she could do with this information. What if she could present it as proof of their rightful claim at the next town meeting? But with that spark of determination came trepidation. What if it only ignited more conflict? The thought scrambled in her head as she set out to dig deeper, visiting the old archives, the dusty corners of Maplewood where history slept. She could already feel the weight of the town's expectations on her shoulders, but this time, it didn't crush her. It fueled her. Over the next few days, as she pored over records, Sarah encountered others who shared stories of struggle, of longing for recognition and justice. Each tale drew her deeper into a sense of purpose. She was connected to this community, their hopes, their dreams, and suddenly, she felt less alone. But just as Sarah began to piece together a solid plan, a familiar figure appeared at the archives, Mr. Thompson. His presence cast a shadow over her newfound energy, a stark reminder that she would have to confront him again. The air felt heavy with unspoken words as he walked through the aisles, casting curious glances. Sarah took a deep breath, determination flooding her system. This was at the moment she would confront him, not just for her family but for everyone who had felt overlooked and silenced. She could hardly believe how swiftly everything had begun to unfold. But the question remained, would she be strong enough to face the man who had stood against her grandma, the man who still held power within the community? As he approached her, a tense silence enveloped them. "What are you doing here, Sarah?" Mr. Thompson asked, a hint of annoyance curling his lips. In that heartbeat, Sarah understood. The true battle wasn't simply over a land deed or a scholarship. It was a fight for her voice, her heritage, and the heart of Maplewood itself. How would she respond to him now? With her heart pounding, Sarah took a step forward. The next chapter of her story was ready to begin, but would she find the words to ignite change? The air crackled with tension as Sarah faced Mr. Thompson. He stood tall, arms crossed, a wall of defiance. She could feel her heart hammering in her chest, like a drum urging her to fight. But words seemed to cling to her throat, catching her breath. The moment felt monumental. "I am researching," Sarah stammered, pushing aside her fears. "I came across my grandma's letter about the land deed." Saying it out loud seemed to light a spark inside her, and she straightened her back. "Mrs. Evans believed our families deserved to share the land." Mr. Thompson's brow furrowed, the annoyance shifting to something darker. "That was ages ago," he scoffed, a dismissive wave of his hand lacing through the air. "The past doesn't matter. You have to look at what's practical." "But you don't understand," Sarah blurted, her voice rising. "It's not just about land. It's about honoring our family, our community. This is part of who we are." As those words slipped out, Sarah felt the weight of her grandmother's spirit surrounding her. She recalled stories of bravery, risks taken, and hopes sealed within pages of a worn-out diary. She wasn't just standing for herself but for others. She was the bridge, the voice for those lost battles that had shaped her family's history. Mr. Thompson merely shook his head, the smirk returning. "And yet, here you are, all alone. Do you really think anyone cares about your grandma's fights? They're worried about making a living, not digging up old grudges." The dismissiveness stung, but it invigorated her resolve. "But they should care. We're all connected. How can we build a future if we ignore our past?" She inhaled, forcing the energy to stay steady inside her. "Fine," he replied, crossing his arms tighter, as if to ward off her words. "Prove it. If you have something worth sharing, take it to the town meeting. Show everyone why it matters." His challenge hung between them like a pendulum. It swung heavy with doubt but also with possibility. Sarah felt the pulse of the town throughout her veins. The voices she had listened to, the stories of despair and hope, wove through her thoughts like a shared tapestry. "Can I count on your support? To speak for us?" she questioned, her vulnerability hanging in the air. Every ounce of her wanted him to say yes, to soften. But he stepped back like a wall closing shut. "That's the thing, Sarah. Some stories are easier left buried." He turned, leaving her surrounded by echoes of her own heartbeat. Sarah felt the heat of frustration rising but matched it with a wave of clarity. He was afraid of losing ground, and maybe, just maybe, he was on the edge of a fault line that could crack wide open. Time was slipping away, and she had one shot to collect the scattered voices of her family and friends. Reflecting on the words of her grandmother, Sarah knew she wouldn't allow fear to suffocate their shared fight any longer. In the following days, she reached out to the people of Maplewood. She invited them for evening gatherings, sharing stories about their past, their hopes, their losses. The air buzzed with energy as they reminisced over cups of coffee and the smell of fresh apple pie wafting in from a nearby window. Excitement built up, layering over the doubts that plagued Sarah. She began to see the pieces come together, the patchwork that formed their history. Each night, they put together plans and drafted speeches, imbued with a fiery spirit that tingled in her hands as she wrote. But while her community rallied behind her, a chilling thought lurked. How would the town take her claims? Would they stand with her, or would they turn away, just like Mr. Thompson? As the meeting day approached, the ominous question plagued her mind. Could she stand strong, face the truths that had lingered so long in the shadows? As she stared at the open letter again, a fresh wave of motivation surged inside her. She had come too far to turn back. In this battle for their voice, for her rightful place in Maplewood's story, was she ready to make her stand? Something in her shifted, and the outcome wouldn't just define her. It could transform the very heart of her community. The clock was ticking. Would she rise to honor the legacy that bound them together, or would the fear of failure drown their whispers of the past? As the town hall loomed before her, Sarah's heart raced with uncertainty, but one thing was clear: the fight was just beginning. What would happen when she stood before them all, at that meeting? Would the voices she gathered echo louder than Mr. Thompson's dismissal, or could fear still darken their legacy? The day of the town meeting dawned gray and overcast, a thick blanket of clouds shrouding the sun. As Sarah approached the town hall, her stomach knotted with anxiety. She could hear the distant murmur of voices inside, thudding against the walls like a heartbeat. Each step felt heavy, each footfall echoing with uncertainty. She gripped the folded letter in her pocket, its edges frayed. It was more than just paper to her, it was a piece of her heritage, a lifeline. Inside, the atmosphere hummed with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Residents trickled in, faces both familiar and foreign, each bringing their own stories, their own burdens. Sarah took a deep breath, smoothing her hair down and trying to project a calmness she didn't feel. She spotted a few of her friends, their encouraging nods providing small bursts of courage amidst the impending storm. As she settled into a chair near the front, she spotted Mr. Thompson seated at the head of the room, his expression unreadable. With each passing moment, Sarah's resolve grew. She was here not only for herself but for every person whose voice had been silenced over the years. In reclaiming her family's legacy, she hoped to ignite a spirit of unity, one that could bind the townsfolk together. The meeting began with the usual business updates on local projects and community concerns. Sarah's heart thudded louder with every agenda item discussed. Then, finally, it was time for public comments. This was the moment she had been waiting for, yet fear wrapped around her like a vice. Next, we have Sarah Kingston, the mayor announced, extending a shaky hand toward her. The room shifted as all eyes turned to her. Sarah rose slowly, her legs trembling beneath her. She could feel the weight of their expectations, their doubts resting squarely on her shoulders. Gathering her courage, she stepped forward, straightening her back and clasping her hands tightly in front of her. "Hi, everyone," she began, her voice wavering at first. "I'm here to talk about something that really matters to me, something that connects us all." She glanced at her friends, their eyes radiating warmth and support. Channeling the energy of the stories shared at her gatherings, she continued, "This isn't just about my grandma's letter or the land. It's about our shared history and the future we want to build together." With every word she spoke, the fog of fear began to lift. She shared tales passed down through generations, narrating the struggles of families like hers who fought for their homes, their heritage. The audience shifted in their seats, some nodding, others whispering among themselves. She caught a glimpse of Mr. Thompson. His brow was furrowed, but his eyes were locked on her, perhaps hearing for the first time the weight of her words. "Every decision we make today will shape the future of Maplewood," she pressed on, feeling the pulse of her community. Let us not forget those who came before us. Together, we can honor their courage and create a legacy of our own. A murmur ran through the crowd, a stirring that felt electric. She sensed the collective emotions brewing within the room. For the first time, Sarah didn't just feel like an outsider, she felt like a part of something much larger. She ended her speech with a simple plea: will you stand with me to reclaim our shared past and build a future that reflects who we truly are? As she stepped back, silence enveloped the room. It felt like the calm before the storm, charged with unspoken words and pent-up emotions. Then, like a tidal wave, the audience erupted. Questions flew, voices advocating, parts of her speech resonating throughout the crowd. But just as hope started to swell, Sarah noticed Mr. Thompson rise from his seat. His presence loomed large, the defiance from their earlier encounter evident in the rigid set of his shoulders. She felt the air shift, uncertainty creeping back in. Would he support her, or would he strike back with the same dismissal? Her heart raced as he cleared his throat, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. What would he say? Had she truly sparked the revolution she had dreamed of, or was the weight of the past too entrenched to be moved? The moment of truth was upon them all, teetering on the edge of change. Would the community rally behind Sarah, or would doubt and division suffocate their collective dream? Mr. Thompson stood, an imposing figure with a furrowed brow that hinted at the weight of his thoughts. Sarah's heart thumped loudly in her chest, its rhythm drowning out the murmurs swirling around the room. She held her breath, praying for anything that could keep the momentum of her speech alive. Thank you, Sarah, he began, his voice steady but laced with an unfamiliar softness. I respect your passion and the history you've drawn from. He paused, scanning the crowd as if weighing each face, searching for a connection. But history isn't just a ledger of what once was, it's also a burden that weighs on our shoulders. His tone shifted, and the warmth that began with Sarah now felt like a shroud. You talk of a legacy. But what do we do when that legacy is built on tensions that still linger? A wave of unease rippled through the audience. Sarah noticed a few heads nodding, retreating into familiar reservations. She felt her own confidence start to quiver under Mr. Thompson's scrutiny. Maplewood is a place with deep roots, he continued. We've all suffered losses, seen divisions grow. And while there might be a history that calls us together, there are also realities that can tear us apart. He faced Sarah fully. This is bigger than one person's story, dear. Frustration bubbled within her. Was he trying to dismiss her? She opened her mouth to respond, but the words tangled in her throat. But then Mr. Thompson's expression softened, a hint of vulnerability creeping in. That being said, he added quietly, maybe it's time for us to acknowledge those stories. Maybe it is time we faced our past and broke down these barriers. A tentative cheer arose from the crowd, followed by a rush of voices, each person eager to contribute their own stories, their own connections to the history young Sarah had illuminated. With every slip of a share from neighbors, townsfolk began to reveal their own family legacy stories about lost homes, about fights for survival, about love and heartache. As Sarah absorbed the wave of voices, tears pricked her eyes. She had ignited something she hadn't fathomed. This wasn't just her grandmother's story anymore, it was the story of all those around her. Every voice mattered, and together they wove a rich tapestry of resilience. Let us not just stand here divided, Sarah finally said, stepping forward again, encouraged by the new tide. Let us create a community gathering to celebrate our past and plan our future. Let us learn from our pain and cherish our victories, together. Nods of enthusiasm began to ripple through the gathered crowd, the tension dissipating like a morning mist under the sun's warm embrace. People glanced at one another with newfound determination. The fear that had plagued Sarah moments ago blossomed into a thrill. This was moving beyond just words, it was happening. Mr. Thompson, still standing, lifted his chin slightly. Perhaps we can start working on something united, then. I have an idea. About his voice trailed off for a moment as if he were crafting it carefully. Suddenly, a burst of laughter interrupted him. A child had accidentally knocked over some chairs toward the back. It caught everyone off guard. Laughter turned to smiles, and even Mr. Thompson's stern front softened, breaking the tension that had held the room captive. But as the laughter faded, Sarah could see the flickers of hesitation still lingering in some of her neighbors' eyes, and her heart sank a bit. The weight of history still pressed down, though perhaps now, it was being shared. As the meeting progressed, ideas flowed, but doubt still lingered like shadows, hiding in the corners. Sarah's spirit soared with her community's energy, yet uncertainty gnawed at her. Could they really change anything at all? Just as the meeting neared its end, Sarah caught Mr. Thompson's eye. He raised an eyebrow, a glimmer of something unspoken passing between them. "We've only begun, Sarah," he said quietly. "The real work is yet to come." What lay ahead felt both daunting and exhilarating. Would they be able to bridge the divides? Would the stories shared hold enough power to transform the fabric of Maplewood? She could feel the resolve strengthen within her. One way or another, it was just the beginning of a journey, one that could unravel things beyond her greatest fear or open doors she hadn't even imagined yet. With hope buoying her spirit, she wondered, was she ready for what came next? Would the community find its way to a shared future, or was this a promise destined to dissolve beneath the weight of the past? As the meeting concluded, the applause rang through the hall, and the energy felt electric. Sarah's heart raced with excitement and trepidation. She had planted a seed, but would it take root? The mingling crowd was vibrant, but she could still sense the undercurrent of apprehension beneath their enthusiasm. Mr. Thompson approached her, his expression serious. "You did well today, but we have much to prepare," he said, lowering his voice. "These conversations won't be easy. We need to ensure that everyone feels safe to share their truths." "Right, absolutely," Sarah replied, her thoughts churning. She nodded in agreement, but beneath her confidence, a knot of anxiety twisted. She was proud of what they had begun, but what if the past pushed back harder than they anticipated? As people began filtering out, Sarah found herself drawn into small groups. She chatted with neighbors she barely knew, their shared tales igniting connections that seemed almost sacred. One woman spoke about the family farm that had been lost during economic hardships, while a man recounted his father's struggle to find work after the factory closed. Each story ravenously devoured another layer of history, more threads pulling them closer. But in each heartwarming tale, Sarah noticed that tight-lipped sorrow lingered. The laughter that bubbled at times felt precarious, as though it could shatter at the slightest disturbance. It was a mix of hope and heartbreak, a reminder that unwrapping painful narratives could lead to healing, but it could also tear open old wounds too raw to bear. That night, Sarah sat on her bed, the weight of everything filled her mind like a tempest. The conversations echoing in her ears were comforting yet burdensome as she pieced together this new community endeavor. Would all their stories truly lead to an honest reckoning? As she scrolled through her phone, she stumbled upon an old photo from her grandmother's album, a faded picture of her standing with other women, all smiling, but their eyes appeared so weary. She knew her grandmother had been remarkable, a fighter through adversity, yet to own that legacy meant she also had to face the hard truth of their struggles. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Mr. Thompson. "We should discuss logistics for the gathering. I'll meet you tomorrow at the cafe at 10. "Sure. I'll be there," she replied, her stomach twisted with a mix of anticipation and dread. They had to confront how the community feasted on shared kindness while also wrestling with the shadows of their history. The importance of dialogue felt paramount, but so did the risk of unraveling the fabric they had so carefully woven in a fragile moment. As Sarah prepared for bed, the weight of the uncertainty pressed on her chest. She closed her eyes, hoping for clarity, but all she felt was the whisper of her grandmother's spirit urging her onward. The next morning, the cafe buzzed with life as she arrived. The scent of brewed coffee mingled with the soft chatter around her. It was comforting and overwhelming all at once, just like her mission. Mr. Thompson was already seated, his hands clasped on the table, a look of determination etched on his face. "Good morning, Sarah. Are you ready?" he asked, not with his usual sternness, but with a hint of camaraderie that made her heart lift. "I think so," she replied, taking a deep breath. As they went over plans for the gathering, outlining how they could structure open conversations and encourage storytelling. Sarah felt her nerves start to settle. But beneath it lay an unanswered question: what if they opened wounds too deep? "Sometimes we have to go through the dark to find the light," Mr. Thompson said, sensing her unease. "This is our chance to step into that," he added with conviction. And as they discussed, Sarah felt a flicker of hope, a way forward that could bring her community together. But her heart ached at the thought of the past, and the truth lurking just beneath the surface. Could they really turn their shared histories into a tapestry of healing? With resolve blossoming in her heart and uncertainties dancing on the edge of her mind, Sarah couldn't help but think about the gathering ahead. They were on the verge of something monumental, but the question still lingered: what hidden truths would emerge? Would they be ready for what lay beneath? A shiver passed through her at the thought. The real question haunted her: would facing their past tear them apart or finally set them free? As Sarah settled into her seat across from Mr. Thompson, the cafe felt alive with possibility. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting warm patches on their table and illuminating the steam rising from their coffee cups. Yet, beneath the glow of promise lay an undercurrent of tension. She could feel it swirling around them like the aroma of fresh coffee. "Let's talk logistics," Mr. Thompson urged, opening his notebook, a serious expression clouding his features. "We need to establish ground rules for the gathering. It's vital everyone knows this is a safe space." "Absolutely." Sarah nodded, her mind racing. The gathering would be the heart of their mission, but what if their efforts opened a floodgate of hurt? She glanced around the cafe, watching the regulars' friends animatedly sharing stories, laughter echoing off the walls. Would their community be as open when faced with their truths? "First off," he continued, "this is about listening. Each story matters. We should encourage people to share at their own pace." "Right," she said, feeling more at ease. "We could have small breakout sessions after a few initial stories, so they can reflect in smaller groups." "Yes, great idea. We can also have a designated person to moderate. That might help in keeping difficult conversations respectful." Sarah couldn't help but feel a flicker of excitement. They were mapping out a new path, one that bridged gaps and honored their shared history. But she also felt the weight of what lay ahead. And what happens if someone gets too emotional? Or if their truth is too painful? Mr. Thompson's gaze softened. "Then we support them. That's what community is for, isn't it?" The sincerity in his voice resonated deeply. She wanted to believe that facing the past could lead to healing, but doubts gnawed at her. Would her neighbors truly be ready to confront the buried pain that haunted them? They brainstormed more ways to structure the gathering, discussing the layout and seating arrangements, the potential for art displays, and resources for those who might need additional help processing their emotions. Her heart swelled at the thought. They could create a place where stories ignited connections, but the unease lingered. A how-to guide for crying in public would be useful, Sarah joked lightly, trying to dissolve some of the tension. Mr. Thompson chuckled, but his expression soon turned serious again. "We can't ignore that some stories will hurt. Whenever trauma is involved, emotions can bubble over." Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes drifting to the window where people outside laughed and moved about their day. How freeing it must be to carry no weight, no untold secrets. "What if it's too much?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if they leave feeling more broken than before?" He leaned in closer, his brown eyes locking onto hers. "Every healing begins with facing the truth. For every tear shed, there is also the potential for joy, for connection. We need to trust that." In that moment, Sarah felt a sudden surge of hope, even amidst the uncertainty. Maybe they could guide their community towards light. Perhaps by acknowledging the dark, they could collectively step into something beautiful. But as she mulled over his words, a question formed in her mind, one that chilled her to the core. What would happen if they uncovered truths so painful that some couldn't bear to carry on? The anxiety swirled again, heavier than before, but it was offset by the flicker of determination igniting within her. They were on the precipice of something profound, and there was no turning back now. As they wrapped up their meeting, Sarah felt the thrill of anticipation. It was time to prepare for the gathering, yet like a haunting refrain, the questions settled back into her mind. They were stepping into the unknown, into fragile stories waiting to be unearthed. Would the community find light, or would they falter in the dark? With the echoes of her grandmother's legacy urging her on, she couldn't wait to find out what lay ahead. The sun dipped low in the sky as Sarah walked home, casting golden hues across the quaint streets of her neighborhood. Each step felt charged with anticipation and trepidation. She replayed her meeting with Mr. Thompson in her mind, the tension and bond they forged over the planning of the gathering. But as she strolled, doubt crept back in, squeezing her heart. What was it going to be like when the stories came to life? Would they be able to handle the rawness, the unpredictable waves of emotion that might wash over the room? She imagined faces, familiar yet altered, expressing grief and joy, unveiling old sorrows and joys. Would it bring them closer, or fracture their fragile connections? At home, the smells from the kitchen welcomed her a warm embrace of roasted vegetables and spices. Her mom was busy, her hands dancing over pots and pans, movement fluid and rhythmic. "Hey there, sweet pea. How was the meeting?" she called out, her voice vibrant. "It went well, I think. We've got a plan." Sarah trailed off, glancing down at her hands. She didn't want her excitement to dim her mother's spirits, but she felt the weight of what lay ahead. "What's wrong?" Her mom turned, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel, concern stitching her brows. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just thinking, what if people open up about things that are too painful?" Anxiety laced her voice. "What if they feel worse after, not better?" Her mom stepped closer, her expression serious but tender. "You want to help people heal, right? Sometimes, the hardest things to say are the ones that need to be said the most. You can't control how others feel, but you can provide a safe space for them." The warmth of her mother's words seeped into Sarah's bones, driving away some of the heaviness. "I know. I wish I could promise them sunshine and rainbows afterwards, you know? The unknown is scary." "I get that," her mom chuckled softly, running a hand through Sarah's hair. "But remember your grandmother's stories? They could be painful, but they were also beautiful. Every tear, every laugh sent ripples of love through our family. It connected us." Sarah nodded, memories of her grandma weaving through her mind, stories filled with heartache and triumph. Her grandma had forged connections through her pain, turning wounds into wisdom. "Maybe that's it," Sarah whispered, her heart fluttering slightly. "Maybe it's not about preventing pain but learning to carry it together." "Exactly." Her mom's smile spread, illuminating the room. "Think of the gathering as a bridge. Some folks will wade through streams of sorrow, while others stroll alongside, supporting them." As they sat together at the kitchen table, the air thick with understanding, Sarah felt a growing resolve. They needed to honor their community's stories, however painful they might be. "Okay, let's do this," Sarah said, her determination solidifying. "We'll prepare for it all, tearful confessions, laughter, and everything in between." Her mom raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "What's the next step?" "We need to gather more support, bring in volunteers who can help with the structure. I want to make sure everyone feels safe. Maybe even a few snacks to ease the tension." "That's the spirit." Her mom cheered, and they both chuckled, sharing a moment of connection. But beneath that resolve, the question still lingered in Sarah's mind like a faint echo. What if someone couldn't handle the truth they uncovered? The gathering was shaping up to be a pivotal moment, yet uncertainty loomed like a shadow. As night fell and they discussed plans, she felt the weight of the unknown tightly woven with hopeful anticipation. Would their community find the courage to share their truths, or would they shy away from the dark corners of their past? In the midst of preparations, Sarah sensed the gathering was more than just an event, it was a launch pad. And she was standing at a critical juncture, ready to leap. What stories would rise to the surface, and who would step forward to share their pain and resilience? The answers awaited her as she took a deep breath, ready for what was to come. The day of the gathering finally arrived, draped in brilliant sunlight and buoyant anticipation. A buzz filled the air of Maplewood's community center as residents shuffled in, warm smiles mingling with nervous energy. Sarah stood at the door, the inviting glow of her grandmother's spirit wrapping around her like a soft hug. "Remember, each word shared is a step towards healing," she reminded a few friends who had come early. Their faces held mixture of excitement and worry, echoing the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. As the opening bell rang, people began to assemble in the main hall. The gentle murmur of chatter rose like a comforting blanket, hushed only by Sarah taking the stage. She cleared her throat, gripping the microphone tightly, awareness of her heartbeat thrumming beneath her skin. "Thank you all for coming," she started, heart racing. Faces turned toward her, expectant. "Today, we are here not just to listen but to connect, to share our stories." She scanned the crowd, meeting the eyes of her mom, friends, and even Mr. Thompson, now seated among the throng, his demeanor seeming not as imposing today. Most importantly, she could see the flicker of hope reflected from others, urging her on. Part of our community's strength lies in our history, both the beautiful and the painful. Through connection and understanding, we can start to heal. As the words flowed out, Sarah felt their weight lifting from her shoulders. She shared the tale behind her grandmother's letter, recounting the loss, the fight, the undying spirit that had shaped her family. Let us begin today by acknowledging that our struggles held power, that they matter. As Sarah stepped down, the room felt electrified. One by one, attendees began to share stories. A local farmer spoke of lands lost and dreams shattered, his trembling vocal cords unveiling raw sorrow. A group of young mothers described the loneliness that came in whispers of midnight, bravely sharing how they navigated the isolation brought on by previous turmoil. Tears shone in Sarah's eyes. Each tale cracked open something within the crowd, transforming pain into unity. She recognized familiar faces softened by empathy, a tangible thread of connection weaving between them. Then, something unexpected happened. A middle-aged man, someone Sarah barely knew, stood up. "I'll go next," he said, voice steadier than she anticipated. His story poured out, detailing a family history rife with loss, a history intertwined with the very land they were discussing. His truth spilled into the air, igniting a spark among others. One by one, people spoke hard truths interspersed with laughter and love. Each voice wove essential threads into their shared tapestry, chipping away at the heaviness of unspoken sorrow. Several times, the air turned heavy with grief. But amidst painful revelations came glimmers of strength. Collected laughter emerged when families shared triumphant memories, reminding everyone of joy's resilience shine beneath the weight. Even Mr. Thompson stood to speak, his voice hesitant but sincere. "I've spent years treating this as a business transaction rather than understanding its emotional impact on all of us," he admitted. "My family's history is intertwined with this town's triumphs and troubles." The walls of division morphed into walls of trust. As the gathering progressed, Sarah felt lighter, as though their stories collectively lifted burdens from their shared shoulders. Each shared narrative, alive with emotion, ever woven into the fabric of the community until their collective strength spun a vision of hope and unity. When it was time for Sarah to close the gathering, she stood taller, heart swelling. "We've witnessed today the rich tapestry our stories can weave. Let us turn this into not just words, but action, a commitment to sustain these connections and support one another moving forward." Applause erupted, echoing like thunder in the room. She saw tears of joy and relief, faces shining with newfound resolve. This was truly an awakening. As conversations continued well into the late afternoon, Sarah felt a transformative energy in the community, connecting branches of shared scars, laughter, and hopes. It was a moment in time, capturing the essence of vulnerability and collective strength, healing in ways they hadn't imagined. In the weeks to come, they would work not only to continue the conversations but to bind their dreams into realities. Community projects stirred into motion, paving paths forward for everyone involved. They even formed a committee, an ongoing effort of remembrance and honor for the stories of those who came before them. Sarah knew now the depth of her responsibility, but she also felt fierce empowerment. They had lifted the vulnerabilities. Perhaps they weren't just stories of pain, but the beginning of hope and healing blossoming into the community. As she looked back at the gathering, she couldn't shake the echoing words of her grandmother, and her mind never let fear silence your voice. They had transformed uncertainty into courage, weaving a new legacy together. This was just the beginning of their journey. The scabs would still twitch, and scars would remain, but each connection created a network of strength, an unshakable bond of family within their community. Together, neighbors would face whatever lay ahead with open hearts, united in ways that would strengthen Maplewood for generations to come. And as evening fell, Sarah couldn't help but smile, a bright, radiant smile, knowing that everything had changed forever. Now, do you want more stories like this? You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this ending, and don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Let us spread hope together.